sure you are all aware of the impact we are having along our coast in terms of increased coastal erosion and increasing storms along our coast. These are a short video of wave overtopping and going to people's houses. And this was part of my PhD work, community around the Volta Delta, where right now this community is completely wiped away because of the increasing erosion in the area. We experienced, within that short period, we experienced erosion rates up to 30 meters a year, and that's quite a high one. And so that's what led to the decimation of that community. And globally and locally, the intervention in the past has always had engineering, where we go in, put in groins, put in seawalls to hold the shoreline. But increasingly we have realized that apart from the fact that these are expensive to put up and also maintain, they also affect the ecology, or they change the ecology of the beach. And increasingly we see with growing systems, it always transfers the problem downstream. And as you can see in this picture, this was constructed quite recently. The last drawing, you can see that it has led to increased erosion in downstream, almost cutting off the road in that community. So with these problems being identified with the gray engineering system, the call has been to start moving towards the green, where we are working with nature, building with nature, and to avoid some of those impacts that we have with the green infrastructure. Of course, the change is not just that drastic. You don't just jump from here to there. We can look at combining, and then ultimately aim to go completely green. Of course, this also helps because, for example, mangroves it's good for our blue economy. It's effective in storing carbon. So if we have such mangroves along our coast, it's also beneficial. So that led to this project, which is looking at mangroves as nature-based solution for coastal hazards, focusing on the eastern coast of Ghana. And like I already mentioned, apart from the carbon stock, the root system and all that is able to trap sediment and build a shoreline, and therefore protecting it against some of the hazards along the coast. And of course, in Ghana, we have some mangroves dotted along the coastline. And so that's what informed this study. And so it's a big project on its own. There are people looking at the social aspect. There are people looking at the carbon aspect and all that. My focus is in this group, which we are looking at developing a tool that we can use to explore the various options. If there's mangrove there, if there's no mangrove there. So kind of developing a digital twin system where you can explore options, where engineers or policymakers can explore options that would help in making decisions. So it's a numerical modeling approach. We used a model called X-Speech, and then we try to put in what if scenarios. What if there's mangrove at this location? What if there's no mangrove? What would be the result on the coastline? So yes, so for example, we just did a profile along the eastern coast where we know that there's mangrove at the back of the beach. And then we set up a simple model, however robust, to test if we put mangroves at the back of the beach, how does the shoreline respond? If we put it in the intertidal zone, how does the shoreline respond? And so with our initial result, I'll not go to the details of all this, but just to give you an idea. So of course, we have some baseline measurements which we are testing the model against. And we realize that in terms of what is existing, no mangroves on the beach, it's able to capture the erosion. The model is able to capture the erosion that is happening on the ground, and that's the first stage. And once we achieve that, we then try to put in the mangroves in the model to see how the shoreline responds. And we've seen that if we put high density of mangroves at the back of the beach, there's a protection level, at the back of the beach, yes, there's protection level up to 53%. It's able to hold the shoreline. If we put them in the intertidal zone, which look ideal, but in our region it doesn't really exist, it's able to protect hold the shoreline almost completely. And also providing other services that mangrove provides for us. And then we looked also into the future. By 2040, if we sea level should rise by 0.2 meters, how will it be? In this case, we saw that when mangroves are planted at the back of the beach, it's able to hold the shoreline. Because what happens normally is that because the roots are able to trap sediment. So as they are trapping the sediment in building the beach, even though the sea level is rising, the sediments are being trapped, building, so it's able to control overtopping and flooding. Okay, so in the future, it looks good if we have mangroves at the back of the beach. In the intertidal zone, it didn't really help because probably the mangroves here, the waves already, water overtops them already, so it's able to go to the back beach and inundate the place. So clearly, this makes a case for mangroves, maintaining our mangroves at the back of the beach, because as sea level rise, they are building the beach for us, and they are preventing or reducing inundation in the future. And like I also said, they are not only doing that, they are giving us all the other services. We are storing carbon, which we can trade with, and also it's also providing spawning ground for fishes and all that. So yes, so just to conclude, of course, it's clear that if we continue to have mangroves on our beach, like in the image you can see, it offers protection for us. And of course, we need to prioritize. So like I said, there's another group which is looking into that, engaging the communities to see how we can restore and conserve our mangroves. And then, of course, it's been mentioned in the National Adaptation Plan and then the Disaster Reduction Framework. So that means we need more research to be able to make those workable. And then, of course, this ultimately what we want to do is we have this toolbox available where people who are not technical people can just go in and play and say, okay, if we put mangrove here, if we put mangrove, what will be the result? The modeling will be at the background, but you who don't know how to model, for example, you can just go and put options, and it will give you results which will inform your decision. So that is what we are aiming towards finally. So thank you very much. And we have published a paper. If you scan the QR code, it can take you to the paper if you want more details. Thank you.
He said over time, this mangrove is able to hold the sediment. But we all know of sand milling around the beaches, which has also exacerbated this issue, the coastal erosion. So in your model, was this considered, or do you have plans on looking at human activities around the coast? Thank you.
Okay. I want us to think about policy lines. Okay. So, given this current challenge, how can the government give support, let's say, coastal private developers, in adopting mangrove instead of the hard? How can the government to actually help such private individuals?
Okay. Thank you. Yes, so the first one was on sustainability of the use of mangroves. Of course, like I said, it has other benefits. In terms of using it here, I didn't present other aspects there, but to really implement it on the ground, there are other considerations you have to take into account. For example, if you go and plant the mangroves close to the shoreline, already they may not even survive the next storm before they grow. So elsewhere where this has been tried, first of all, they put temporary protection structures offshore. After mangroves reach a certain stage, then they are protected. Then they can offer that protection. Then in terms of they are the back beach eventually being overtopped, from the model, it is clear that if what is happening is as they are there, sediments, as the water overtops, it carries sediments, deposits, so it builds up. So what will happen is that it will not, the water will not, the sea will not eventually be able to overtop unless in a very extreme event. Yeah, so for a very, very extreme event, that is another case altogether. But with the natural sea level rise that we are seeing, the mangrove is able to build to keep the height above the sea level. So that's for the sustainable. So yes, we can do something. If it's not, like I said, you cannot say you are jumping straight to all mangroves. You can combine with the hard engineering at some point until you feel that your system is strong enough to go purely mangrove. And in terms of human activities, for this model, we have not considered human activities. There's a next stage of blowing up and making it more complex, where you can put in all those activities. But of course, for the site we selected also, we are sure that there's no winning going on as of now. So when we get more complex, we can add all those things. And yes, government have, I think, I've not really fully read the national adaptation, so I don't know how far they've gone in terms of supporting this community. I know NGOs come in to support to restore, but I don't know how far government is involved in that. Maybe director or head would help us if there's something like that. So I guess I've answered the three questions.